yeah, this is my talk. I'll just go straight into a little bit about me. That's me, SteelCon 2022. I don't know why my face has been pixelated like I'm guilty of something awful, but that's my name. I'm from Abertay, graduated 10 years ago as of the 7th. It's a long time, I'm old. I've been working through MSSPs for those 10 years, currently at Quorum, and I sometimes play video games quickly, hence this talk. I have other hobbies too, but I don't know why people put them on slides. So, memory corruption. It's an eternal issue in all computing. Ever since, computers were made, they needed memory, and it covers buffer overflows, dangling pointers, double freeze, and basically anything that's in your error code in your blue screen of death. They're almost always some kind of corrupted memory. Now, in engineering, all problems can be summarized as it moves when it shouldn't move, or it shouldn't move when it should move, and memory corruption can be pretty much summarized the same way. Memory changed when it shouldn't have, or it didn't change when it should. Is it still a problem? So these are stats from the known exploited vulnerability database. I just exported the whole thing and totaled them by CWE, which is Common Weakness Enumeration, just what category of exploit it was. The one in yellow in the middle is what we're going to be talking about today, the use after free. The principle behind that goes back as far as computers do, and when I looked up a couple of days ago, when I wrote this particular slide, there is a highly likely to be exploited Chrome vulnerability that has shown up in interest groups, which is something to do with injecting adverts into the browser, so it's probably good that it's bad. So, run quickly through memory and the types of memory. So, you've got your stack and your heap. The stack is smaller individual stacks per thread on your computer. They're used for storing like local variables and the functions that are running, and then the return information of where it needs to go back to after your function. And what we're going to be talking about today is the heap, which is just a big lump of memory, and that's essentially where you're keeping your data that the stack then pools and uses. It's where your shared variables are across the whole program, and any large local variables need to work, like arrays, lists. Now the functions, when they're in the stack, need to point to where their stuff is on the heap. So it will allocate a chunk of memory, as much as it needs, in the heap, and then it has a pointer in itself to that chunk of memory. It'll be a bit more clear in the demos, but one thing to note is that in the heap, those chunks of memory and the pointers to them need to be manually cleaned up. It's not automatic. Something needs to go in and say, okay, I'm done with this chunk of memory, and deallocate it. To simplify even further to the point of barely being true, the stack is where the actions are done, like the actual function execution, and the heap is where the stuff that's being actioned on sits. So the use after free, since the heap needs explicitly tidied up, it has object destruction, which is pretty aptly named because it doesn't delete the memory, it just deallocates it. All the information is still there, it's just no longer recognized as used memory, and the next thing can start using that chunk instead. So the problem with the use after free vulnerability is you need to make sure that any references to the chunk of memory that a function is using are also cleared up or terminated after you free up that chunk of memory. So if your pointer is pointing at nothing, that's not true because there's something there, it's just doesn't know what it is. I'll rush through this diagram. So, function 1 creates a variable or creates a something that needs memory, marked in green. There is a function 2 needs to access that variable, so it is pointing at the bit it needs, that's marked in orange. Function 1 finishes up, tidies up the memory, deallocates it, but function 2's pointer still hasn't been tidied up, so it's pointing to the bit of memory. And then once function 3 starts it, it can change the value, and when function 2 needs to reach out to it, it's now different data. For a bit clearer, can anyone tell me hands up if you know what the smallest moon of Neptune is, of Uranus? There should be more hands. Okay, what is it? Miranda. Correct. Very good. So, I've been careless here, because I've left my hand up. Now, I'm only here for an hour. After this hour, my talk finishes, and someone else comes in and starts their talk. Maybe you want to go to track 1 instead. So, you leave your seat, and you go there. But someone else wants to see the next talk. So they come in and sit in your seat. And I say, what's the smallest moon of Uranus? They don't know. That's the principle behind use after free. So, can I see it? It's lovely in theory, but the concept of actually doing it in practice in a computer program is a different story, the practical aspect. You get your demos, which are thick on jargon. It's just black terminals. They press enter, a load of numbers appear. They press enter again, one of the numbers is changed. You press enter again, and the calculator appears, and everyone politely applauds. My demos are videos today, so don't applaud them. It's like clapping when the plane lands. And really, it's just kind of boring to watch. So, I want to do something that isn't boring. There we go. So, the Nintendo 64. It was one of the first 64-bit video game consoles. It has 64-bit next-gen processor, 4 megabytes of RD RAM, and a reality copressor GPU capable of Z buffering and realistic texture mapping. Woo. I know. Bet you wish you did more Z buffering. Ocarina of Time was a game from 1998, and it's what we're going to be doing a use after free in today. So it was released in November 1998. Put your hands up if you were born after November 1998. It's quite a lot of people in the room. So this is Link. He is the main character. He is a small elf boy from Hyrule. He lives in an idyllic forest with his best friend there. You do various things in the game, such as... There we go. You run around, you pick up rocks, you throw rocks, you fight enemies. Let's just skip through some stuff. You throw chickens, you do fishing. Let's move on. Throughout the game, you climb mountains, you go in volcanoes, you go inside a big fish, a desert, and a torture chamber that's hidden in a well somewhere, all in order to topple the reign of evil King Ganondorf and seal him away in the Phantom Zone. I've done it quite quickly. It's not particularly good time, and it takes a long time to do, and I'm busy, so I don't do it often. So let's go into a bit more detail about the game. The game itself is mostly full of objects. They're the actors in the game. You have sort of the landscape, but everything on it is an object. So the NPCs, the signs, the pots, that thing, the chickens, they're all individual objects, even down to the trees. Anything that can be interacted with is an object. And as there was 64-bit processor and 4 megabytes of RD RAM, there is a heap. So, much like the Matrix, the world is built out of numbers. Here we have the bits that are changing. Those are the characters walking around, and these numbers just scroll on endlessly. Well, for 4 megabytes. Now, the objects, in order to save some resources, are only... I was hoping that the fact that I've muted the computer wasn't going to do anything. I don't know if there's a volume dial on it.
There is at the top.
What's it?
At the top is a button. At the touchscreen.
Oh. Is it the down? Oh, there we are. There we go. Mute it. There we go. So, Link is in a town. There's a chicken. There's a man walking. Sign. Grass. But in practice, I've just locked the camera. So, when Link runs around, he's looking at the grass. It's still there. But as he walks away from it and looks away, much like in real life, if you're not looking at it, it doesn't exist. So I want to clarify the difference in terminology I'm going to use. I'm going to call things culled, and I'm going to call things freed. Now, when I say freed, I mean that the object itself in the heap has been deallocated. I'm going to say culled when it's like this, the object isn't being looked at. It's still in memory, it still exists, it's just the game no longer, it isn't actively running functions on it. Yeah, so it saves resources. Most of your functions stop running on it entirely. And it's like a cone of view from the camera that's following Link from behind, determining what actually gets loaded. Now, the game would be boring if the actors didn't interact with each other. So lots of interactions involve references linking to objects. So here, when your character Link picks up the boulder, what it does is it maps... Yeah, I've got the heap there. You can see the bits that change, that are now changing as he moves around. This is the heap for the rock. As you pick it up, the coordinates are now mapped to Link's position, where he is. The rotation of the rock follows the rotation of Link, which gives the illusion of the rock being above his head and being carried around. And another item you have here is a boomerang. So here at the top we have a token from a spider that we killed. You throw the boomerang at it, the boomerang picks it up and brings it back to you. Now if I pull up the heap, what happens is you can see the coordinates of the token changed. Here's what's happening in the stack. You have the token, which is in blue. Just so you know, all of these demos have dummy numbers in them. It's just examples. You have the token mapped in blue, and you have the boomerang mapped in orange there. And the coordinates of the boomerang are the green bit. So as Link throws it, it moves towards the skull, it picks up the skull. A reference is now made between the coordinates of the boomerang and the coordinates of the skull token. And as it moves back to Link, it syncs the coordinates between each other, again giving the illusion of the token coming towards you. Another concept is loading zones. I know I mentioned objects get culled when you're not looking at them to free resources. That's not enough. Culling actors only goes so far, so bigger areas themselves are actually split. Usually these transitions are hidden behind corners or when you go through tunnels. Unfortunately, I'm not able to skip ahead in the video, so you have to look through the demo I made when I wasn't as concerned about time spent. So, don't worry, the other demos are edited in Caden. So yeah, here we have the camera zoomed out as you travel through this corner. You have the area on the left mapped. As you cross over an invisible boundary, it maps the room on the right, map to the left, map to the right, and the objects are being allocated and deallocated as necessary. So that is the key difference here that is exploitable, is that the objects are unloaded as you travel through this transition. Not just culled, they're gone. The memory actually is deallocated and used for the next area. Which is now how we get to the fun stuff of actually breaking things. So there is something that the Ocarina of Time community calls stale reference manipulation. It's used after free, just in different ways. Stale means freed. Reference is what you're using. and manipulation didn't really actually map to anything, so I've just said after. Stale reference manipulation is actually a better name for it than use after free, because it does involve manipulation to exploit. So, here's another skull token. Here's another boomerang being thrown at it. I throw the boomerang, but this time I pull out chicken, so I'm looking at the door. I open the door, loading a new zone. I come back through the door before the boomerang reaches me, and there's a door. There's a door just floating in midair. There's a bonk for good luck because I can't move. So this door is floating in midair. It isn't just any door, it isn't a random door. It is specifically this door from this bit of the map. It has been moved. Not created a door, it's moved a door. So what's happening here? Same diagram. Boomerang heads towards the token. We now have a reference that is made as before. The coordinates are now going to match each other. However, as the boomerang comes back to us, we left the area, which then freed the object from memory. That memory is now available for anything to use, which when we come back in, it does. The door is loaded onto the heap. So the coordinates are updated every frame of gameplay. So for this one frame as you come in, the door is loaded onto the heap in the correct location. You can see the coordinates are not synced up. But on the next one, since the boomerang's still moving, and it's still pointing at that old bit of memory, it now updates the coordinates of the door, since that's sitting in memory now. And the door is pulled to you. That's cool. So where does the door go? To the other end of the door. If you open it, you just walk through. Does this make me go fast? Not really. How do I go fast? So let's go for something a bit more complex on the same ideas. Something called function point manipulation. So in the heap, in a number of different Nintendo 64 games, this is Super Mario 64 as an example, they have a lovely structured object table. You can see throughout the game, you've got an elevator in 41, you've got Mario in 63, you've got a load of bob-ombs throughout that chunk, and then as the objects are used and unallocated, that slot's emptied, something else can move into that slot. It's lovely and structured in the heap. There are similar exploits where you turn one object into another by holding nothing and then loading a new object which goes into the same slot. Ocarina of Time has a much more general purpose heap which maps more with non-video game applications, the majority of applications in your everyday life. What I mean by that is that the heap is just memory and it fits objects in wherever it can. There's not a structured table of where they go. So, what we had before was you have an object in blue. When the new object was loaded, it was loaded into the same spot. But what you can have is the start of one object is not necessarily the start of the next. So what if when the door loaded, it wasn't in the same slot, it was one step down. The coordinates are still in the same place of hold on, I can do the laser pointer on this, can't I? There we go. So the coordinates are still in the same spot of the object. They're still on the bottom 4, or 5 in this case, because I'm bad at doing diagrams. So, yeah. So our pointer is still in the same memory address, but it no longer corresponds to the coordinates of the second object. So this is the kind of thing where you get into real trouble when objects are sort of misaligned. They're overlapping where your pointer is. So you're no longer doing coordinate for coordinate. You're now doing coordinate for something else. So we mentioned that the objects have functions. They do stuff. Each object does a number of things. The functions for those objects are not stored in the object itself. So, that skull token, any functions it has, are not within that chunk of memory that was allocated for it. Those functions are somewhere else in the heap. What you have in the object is just a pointer that says, this function I need is in this memory register. And essentially, whenever you're using it, it's a jump command. Yeah, this pointer is used to jump straight to the code. So as an example, we have this guy who gives you, start the video, who gives you an upgrade to your bombs when you blow him up for some reason. In his laser pointer, there we go. In his code, there is a pointer to a function, let's call it getItem. When you spoke to him and it said, I need to give him an item, it says, okay, 13 dB, heads down to 13 dB, and there's the function code. Okay, let's just start the video again. So how do we break that? We've got something called function pointer manipulation. So as I said before, when you've got the overlap of memory, you are now overwriting different values within an object. You're no longer doing coordinate for coordinate, you're doing coordinate for something else. Function pointers are a value within an object. So if you've freed up an object, but you still have a stale reference, if that stale reference is over a function pointer, then whenever that object tries to use that function, it's no longer pointing at the right thing. Yeah, coordinate to coordinate becomes coordinate to function pointer. And the object just runs whatever's at the pointer. In practice, usually this just crashes the machine because it's pointing at something that doesn't exist, something way off of the heap or the bit of memory it's supposed to be speaking to. Or even if it is within the bit it's supposed to be speaking to, it's garbage data. It doesn't know what to do. It panics. It crashes. But what if we put something in that function pointer that it can recognize? So, same area as before with the guy who's rolling. There are pots in there. It has a reference to a function called draw. Every frame, if we think back to that cone of when the object exists, is active. Every frame it is active, it has to draw itself. It has to appear on the screen. There is a function called draw, which makes it appear. So every frame, it is getting the laser pointer out. It is jumping to the draw function using, let's say, 14.3a. And we have another function, same as before, getItem. When Link picks up the pot, same as a rock, the coordinates follow him around. As you rotate, the pot rotates too. So let's say that bit in orange is the rotation angle. Now if Link picked up an object that was then freed up, and the pointer still stays active, a new pot loads in, let's say one step down, it overlaps the previous memory, so our reference now overlaps the function pointer to draw. There we go. The reference to the rotational angle still exists, it's just over the function pointer now. So if we have this non-existent object in our hands, it's still updating the rotation. So if we just rotate to a value that corresponds to getItem, whenever the pot is on screen, it says, okay, I need to draw myself. I need to go to this area of memory to run the function. It now points at getItem. So again, this is another one that I'm not going to be able to skip through. I'm speaking to a guy. I should have started this earlier. So what we're going to do is we need to pick up a pot and unload it. Now the easiest way to do it here is to pause the pick up pot action, and then while we're paused, we launch ourselves backwards with a bomb, until we're out of the loading zone. But we're still storing the pickup function. So once we're out, we've picked up the, hold on, let's see, I can pause now. We now are holding nothing, which is a reference to the first pot in memory. We go back through at, hold on, the laser pointer. The lovely thing about this practice ROM I was using to do the demos is it actually has the ability to set up heap watchers in actual gameplay. So we've got them down here. So this 7070 was the rotational value that I just turned my non-existent pot to, which is the bit of memory that has overwritten the draw function of another pot. So, fuck. Right, rather than watch it again, basically it crashed. And when you're making use after free vulnerabilities or any memory corruption vulnerabilities, that's pretty much what's going to happen. Even if you know what you're doing, it's going to crash. It's going to crash a lot. And even when you make a vulnerability, an exploit that works, Eternal Blue from 2017, for example, the one that did WannaCry, hugely successful exploit. In practice, if you tried it, you'd find out that it actually just blue screens the computer about a third of the time. So I took this guy's off YouTube, a guy called Seedborn, who does very good videos on various Ocarina of Time fun things to do with breaking the memory. So he has done the same. He has overwritten the function pointer for the pot. He is going to look at it soon. There we go. And as we turn towards the pot, you'll see the pot is not drawn. It doesn't exist. That's because we overwrote the draw function with the function that says pick up a bomb pack. Cool. What can I get? Pretty much anything. The way he set it up, you're gonna run. There we are. The way he set it up, you've got a value here. He did a thing that actually changes that memory pointer as well. That's just the pointer in memory that says, what item is that function going to make me pick up? So you could change that to make anything show up, any item in the game, including things that will crash it. Does that make me fast? Well, I can get the items faster, but not really. So how do I go really fast? Oh, I'm making good time, actually. So, function point manipulation, we can overwrite the pointer to a function. So we can now jump to any function that is loaded into the heap. Unfortunately, there is no function called beat the game. So why don't we just make a function that beats the game? So we do have arbitrary code execution in this. So, yeah, manipulating the function pointers are cool, but it can only do the functions that are loaded into memory. We can only do tasks that the game wants to do. But we have the ability to change the function pointer. Doesn't mean we need to make it point at a function. We can jump into anything we want. Now, something to remember is that numbers are just numbers in the heap. What they are is entirely about the context of how they are being used, whatever the function in the stack is trying to do with the numbers. So if we've got 90, 90, 90, if it's being passed into a function saying where the object is, that's some nice coordinates. So it plots it at 90, 90, 90 in the map. Let's say you've got a renderer for something, and you need to make it sort of mid-grey coloured. 90, 90, 90 is now a hex code. Or say there's an item you need to pick up, and the game needs to work out which item it is. You can have 90, 90, 90 as the ID for that item. Or it can be machine code for execution, which is fun. So if you can control the destination, you can control the world, essentially. So this is where the fun demo goes, and this is going to be really hard for me now that I can't pause and jump the video around while it's presenting. So the start of the game, this is me starting from fresh. The first thing we do is set our file name. What we set the file name as is very important, and it's why we do it in Japanese, because there are so many more characters, so many more hex values you can make out of the... Hold on, let's see if I pause it. Oh, fuck. I'm trying to work out if I can pause the video and then start it again.
What about it not in presenter mode? It's just
yeah, if I can pause it and start it again. Okay, I can pause it and start it again. That's something. Worst comes to the worst, I will come out of presenter mode and just have it as a video. But no, this is a very specific file name we're giving, because if you think about what we were overwriting, it was only 32 bits. It was only a 2-byte word. You can't really do much with that other than, as we'll see, jump. So we now have a file. We start the game. We go outside our house, as we saw near the start. Our best friend comes over to speak to us. We ignore her entirely, and we need to move to the next area. We need to have a sword and a shield. So we go pick up our sword, and we need to buy a shield. So we start picking up money. Now, the rupees, the monetary unit in Hyrule, the rupees we're picking up are very important, because once they're picked up, you pick them up. They're permanently gone, which is good because it makes the heap a lot simpler when you load the area. Fewer objects, more consistent the heap will be. So we now buy our shield, and we buy some flashbangs, and we go speak to our childhood bully Mido, who is stopping us from going forward until we have the sword and shield. And now we have gone to this loading zone that I showed you earlier. And now that we have a loading zone, we have the ability to free up objects, and this is where we can do fun stuff. So, as you saw, when I jumped over those pillars, I picked up a rupee, picked up 5 coins. There we go. So there is an invisible object here. I'm just going to call it a monitor for the rest of this, because that's what it does. All it does is keeps an eye on whether Link has touched the 2 spots in midair there. Every frame it's active, it just says, has he touched these points? Has he touched these points? Has he touched these points? And much like the object, it is active when he is looking at it. I've got a watch here. You'll see that it goes to 40 when it is active. So we have got to the loading zone. I'm going to bring up the heap. Once I get out of laser pointer mode. I'm going to bring up the heap. So this is just a graphic visualization of the heap, because what we're going to do is go in and out of the loading zone with particular objects loaded. And all we're doing here is loading and unloading the heap over and over again with the same objects, which makes it more consistent, more consistent, more consistent, more consistent, until it's a known value, until we have a set heap layout. I don't know how many times I've gone back and forth there. I guess not enough. So what we did was we went back and forward with everything loaded. That time we turned around, we had unloaded Mido, the bully, and this time we're doing it with him loaded again. Again, we're doing this in a known way to structure the heap into a consistent thing that we have, well, I say we, people have worked out before to set up this. Now, what I'm doing here isn't particularly important, it's just some camera shenanigans. Because we still need to pick up an object that doesn't exist. Now, if you think to the pot we picked up before, we paused picking up the object until we left the room. We can't do that here. I've rattled through that a lot faster than I planned to. That explanation a lot faster than I planned to. So if we can't store picking up the object until Link's away, we just store picking up the object until the cameras goes away. Oh, that's why I did it. So there's a function in the rock that if you pass across a loading zone, it carries the rock through with you. That's to get around all of these shenanigans of unloading objects while they're held. However, if you think about when I was showing objects being culled when the camera isn't on them, that's one of the functions that applies to active objects, not culled objects. So if the camera isn't looking at the object when we pick it up, and it's not looking at the object when we go through the loading zone, technically it doesn't exist. So this is when it would be lovely to skip through. Because what we're going to do here is take our object, take our rock, culled rock, for a walk, all the way to the loading zone. Now in the actual game, the camera doesn't move, it's stuck, so you're doing all of this blind. I just used a debug thing to free up the camera so you can see him walking all the way to the loading zone. And this is where I got stuck on a wall because I did it wrong. And then I wiggled the control stick for a while. And then eventually I got through. And we have gone through to a loading zone. This is what it looks like in practice when the camera's frozen. As soon as we go through the loading zone, we have shot through to the loading zone holding nothing. As you can see, Link is holding an object that doesn't exist, which means he's holding a reference to memory that is no longer assigned to an object. Just show of hands if you're following. That is a lot more hands than I was expecting. That's good. So, all of that was just to hold nothing. Now we are ready to start. Now we're ready to start actually doing stuff. So what we've done here so far is load the area with a heap we know. This is how it's laid out. Because we did all of that setup, we know it's structured like this. It was a pain in the ass making dummy numbers, so from now on, it's just going to be blocks of colour. So you've got a rock, and there is a rotation value in the rock. That's its angle. It's a 2-byte phrase. When Link picks up the rock, there is now a reference set between Link's rotation and the rock's rotation. As Link turns around, the rock turns around too. And it's that mapping that does that. Leaving the area with the rock culled now properly kills the rock. It's now unloaded, freed, destroyed. But that pointer to the rotation still exists. So, here is... This one I might have to go get the non-presenter view because I'm going to try and really push myself by doing diagram transitions while the video is playing. So, yeah, bear with me on that. So the first thing we're going to do is set the rock to a certain angle. This angle is going to be, what is it? AF80. Or AE, yeah, AF80. So we are turning, we've put it to that angle, and we've dropped the rock. What we have done here is overwritten the pointer to... Is that the next one? Yeah. We've overwritten the pointer to update on that monitor. When we went back into the room... I'll start off with that. When we went back into the room, we have loaded the heap with the monitor in a place where our reference is now over the top of the update function pointer. We drop the rock, and we have overwritten the we've overwritten the pointer. It is broken. Where is it pointing? It points at 8F80. Now, what is at 8F80? It is Link's rotation. Ignore for demonstration purposes, and because I forgot to do it when I was writing the diagram, this should actually be within the purple block, because it's part of Link. But that is something we can control, and that's important, because we want to point at something we control. All that's going to happen when the function pointer reaches a destination is it's going to run what's there. It's going to take it as machine code and execute the machine code. So we are going to have to set our rotation value to 0804. Now, what does 0804 have? 0804 is a jump. Where is it jumping? It jumps to our file name. We can't do anything with 0804 alone. So all we do is set that as a jump to the file name. And our file name, which I have put, once I've got the laser pointer up, we have put down here, well, I put it down here as a watch. This isn't going to change. This is just the value of the file name. It is, 8 bytes, 64-bit phrase, or 264 bits. So let's unlaser pointer, start the video again. So, we are turning to 0804. Actually, let's just step through the diagram. What is this file name? This file name is also being run as machine code because we're just jumping to more machine code. This machine code loads this value, this one, FFEF, which I'll explain in a second what it is. It loads it into a particular registry and then jumps to another bit of code in orange, which is just a bit of code that is in the heap we have structured. What's in it doesn't matter right now. We haven't got any control of it, but we know what it is. What that function does is it increments the register by 1 and then has a return, so it jumps all the way back to the monitor code, so we don't crash. It's a very important thing when you're exploiting memory corruption, is that you have to finish with a return back, because otherwise the machine gets stuck, because it gets to the end of whatever you want to do and says, I'm done. What now? So you have to have that return to get back to the start so we can continue on going. So, I am going to turn. Now, I really suck at doing the precise turns, so I've done it frame by frame here. So it is going to be quite slow. I am turning link. Slowly. 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 We're getting there. We turn link to 0804. And now all we need to do is run the update function. Now the update function runs when that monitor object is active. So we have to point the camera at it. Now what we want to do is change this the important value there to FFF8, which means that object has to be active for exactly 9 frames. Because as we move through here, it's active, it goes up 1. Every frame that is 40, it's incrementing by 1. There we go. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and we're off. The camera sweeping back has gone for exactly 9 frames. And what we do is that we then walk into this house and we have successfully sealed Evil King Gandorf in the Phantom Zone and beaten the game. Yeah? You look awfully surprised about it. I would be too. I said that it's like clapping when the plane lands, so you're all Americans is what I'm understanding. So, yeah. So, basically, everything we did there was to set up our own function that increments one value by 1 bit, or 1 byte, 1 value, 1 unit, whatever. And we do this by putting ourselves in an exact rotation value in such a way that the camera sweeps around and sets it active for 9 frames. Like that. I'm going to do a nicer diagram, straighter diagram, that doesn't involve a big block and a load of colors. So our monitor says, I am active. I need to update. We've overwritten the function pointer with the angle of the rock we freed up, the non-existent rock. That rock points to Link's rotational angle as machine code, the 0804. That machine code jumps to our file name, also as machine code. That machine code loads the important value into a register and then jumps to another consistent bit of memory, which adds 1 to the register and returns, puts us back to the start. And this cycle is happening every frame that the monitor is active. To clarify, the important value is what's called the next cutscene. Essentially, it's just a reference to something that organizes what exits go where. So, if I go into a house, that's referencing whatever table sends me to that house. If I go out the area, it takes me to the area that entrance leads to. By incrementing it, we've shuffled all the exits about, and FFF8, through trial and error, was identified as a value that puts the end of the game into one of the doors in the starting area. So, everything we've done was to change one 32-bit word up 9 numbers. Everything we did there. And yeah, that is arbitrary code execution. That is how you go fast. In practice, this took me about 22 minutes or something. If you know what you're doing and you do it fast, it's about 8. Over the year, that was a strategy developed by other people in 2020. Over the years, they've made much more efficient speedrun strats, to the point that they now, as soon as you free up the object, they've set up a jump chain of code that just immediately warps you to the end. So the record is now, I think, 3 minutes 55 seconds. Like, it's about 5 seconds after you free up the rock, you just press R and the game beats itself. Credit, I'm just gonna put the credit up on the screen because hundreds of people, at least 100 people have been involved in this over, I think they started doing the stale reference manipulation, finding out what it could really do in 2020. So it's been 6 years of streamlining and just finding other fun stuff to do. Because it's fun breaking things. That's why we all work in security, isn't it? Hands up if you like breaking things. Hands up if you got into security because you like breaking things. I did too, and it was video games that I was breaking. Specifically Pokemon, but that's a different talk. So yes, Mr. Cheese built a lot of these strategies. Exodus is a good YouTube channel that just does random stuff, and anything he finds fun, he will just do and put up. Yeah. Other people here have done tutorials. There's a Discord with dozens of people in there. And the team who made the practice ROM, because having an actual patch of the game that allowed me to bring up the heap and watches for particular memory values was very helpful for the demonstration, because God knows how I would have done it otherwise. So, 10 minutes left. That's good timing. So, go to the real-world takeaways. My original plan for this talk was to start with a boring demo of a real-world vulnerability and end in the demonstration of the same real-world vulnerability to map the things between the two. But all of the actual demos I could find were like OWASP code, which is just like a 5-line, deliberately vulnerable strip of code that doesn't actually do an exploit. It's just, this is what it looks like when it crashes. So you're not getting a demo, you're just getting me talking about it. So to begin with, use after free was pretty easy to understand theoretically. I did it by pointing at a seat, or someone in a seat. This is why you don't sit in the front row. but some real-world takeaways when it comes to understanding how it goes from the theory to an actual exploit that makes the calculator appear. You need to be able to control the value that the reference points at. Most use after freeze. The proof of concept is, hey, we crashed it. It says use after free. It's in an area we theoretically control. My AI told me it's a high. I've reported it. It's unlikely that it's going to be big, so you're going to be jumping a lot. The idea is that your reference probably doesn't point at much memory, so as we did in the example, you're basically putting a jump. Does anyone here know what a ROP chain is? Hands up if you know what a ROP chain is. Yeah, not as many hands there. So that's return-oriented programming, which is basically when you do code without writing any of your own code. You are just jumping between existing bits of memory. So you're not actually writing any of it. You just have a heap, and you are saying, as we had, increment register by 1, jump to this value. And then this value has machine code that reads as load this register into memory and jump to this one. So you're not actually putting any code in putting any code into the heap. You're just jumping between existing operands, which is basically how the use after freeze the exploit work. You have control over a small amount, and you're just jumping between bits that you don't actually control, but you know where it's going. There we go. Also practically, you need to know how the heap is laid out. You can't exploit if you don't know where the pointers go. So you need to know where the functions you want to go to are, or where the operands you need to jump to for a ROP chain go. So there's 2 ways you can do it. You can either set it up so that the heap is in a known value, as we did by going in and out of the area. A lot more commonly in real-world exploits is memory leaks, where you have another vulnerability first of a memory leak, which is basically, it tells you what's in what memory. Yeah, you've got a lot of memory leak vulnerabilities are basically, I have managed to pool the function table, which tells me where all the functions are. And now I can use that in my vulnerability. You're chaining a memory leak into a use after free to actually do what you want. And yeah, actually quite importantly, in a use after free, you actually need to use it. Dangling pointers are fun, but that second function that has the pointer, you actually need to have a way to use it. If you've got a dead reference, a stale reference, it doesn't mean anything if it's just sitting there. And as a security conference, it really doesn't feel right unless I say protections. I didn't spend much time on this slide. ASLR, anyone know what that is? Address space layout randomization. I make the heap, scramble the heap a bit more, make sure the functions are in a different spot every time. It's decent, it's not perfect. As I said, it doesn't protect if you've got a memory leak vulnerability because it just tells you where those random addresses are. NTDLL now has integrity checks. It's a lot more, it needs a lot more Windows internal knowledge than I have to understand how it actually works, in that it is ensuring that you are only moving to code in the heap that should be executed. It's not DEC, it's not data execution prevention, it's a new thing that I haven't really got any information on how it works. But it exists, and that doesn't really help Chrome. You've got, that's why a huge load of these exploits show up in Chrome for some reason. I think it's just because it's a popular application that's on every machine, and Google's got a massive bug bounty. So everyone, their mum's running an AI looking for use after free vulnerabilities. And most importantly, just stop using C. It's 2026. We've got coding languages that have inbuilt memory protection. You don't need to do it anymore. Have you seen how many asterisks are in a C code, in a C application? Those are all your pointers to bits of memory. It doesn't make sense. It makes it hard to read. Nobody likes it. And now that I've ranted about C, does anyone have any questions? We've got 4 minutes. Yes, Dan?
I would like the object pool you showed from Mario 64. Is that like an application level?
Oh, yes, I meant to mention that. So that is another game that is incredibly popular. Everyone loved it from childhood, so people have spent years breaking it.
As I understand, it's broken as well. So does the object pool help, or does it just make the...
That's just a diagnostics tool for the game. You just hook it into the game and it tells you what's happening there.
And if it's reserving parts of the heap for different objects, does that make this, like the user after free show this and operating times, to make that less applicable?
It's not that it makes it less applicable, it's just not as impactful. Right. Because you can replace an object with another object. Because you've not got that overlap, you can't... You're only able to replace, like coordinate with coordinate. You're holding an object that doesn't exist. You can drop another object in the same spot, but it is another object.
Thank you. Good talk.
I've got 3 minutes. Any other questions? Nice. Thanks, everyone.